In the shadow of towering skyscrapers and amidst the overlooked corners of the city, Samuel Johnson's story unfolds as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Homeless and burdened by the scars of tragedy, Samuel navigates a world that often turns a blind eye to his struggles. Yet, an unexpected encounter with a stray dog named Shadow becomes a turning point, reigniting hope in his heart and setting him on a path of redemption. This tale chronicles Samuel's journey through despair, resilience, and eventual healing. From the depths of homelessness to the warmth of a new family, the bond between a man and his dog transforms not only his life but also those around him. Through moments of hardship and glimpses of hope, Samuel discovers the power of compassion, second chances, and the enduring strength found in connection. This is a story of survival, renewal, and the unbreakable bond that can lead even the most lost souls to a place of belonging. The shadows of the city. The story begins in the stark contrast between the towering skyscrapers of downtown and the neglected streets below. Samuel Johnson, a 52-year-old homeless man, navigates this urban dichotomy, embodying the struggles and resilience of those forgotten by society. Each morning, Samuel wakes in his tattered tent, pulling a worn blanket closer against the city's chill. The sounds of car horns, subway rumbles, and early commuters' chatter filter through the thin fabric, a reminder of the bustling world that seems indifferent to his existence. Samuel's life, however, wasn't always like this. Once, he was a skilled carpenter, known for his precision and artistry. His hands, now rough and calloused from survival, were once his tools of pride. Memories of his previous life haunt him, vivid and bittersweet. He recalls the laughter of his children, Tyrone and Aisha, playing in the backyard while the aroma of Marie's cooking filled their modest home. Samuel's family was his anchor, his source of joy, and his reason to persevere through long days at the construction site. He worked tirelessly to provide a better future for them, dreaming of family vacations, college graduations, and golden anniversaries. But everything changed in a single night. The tragedy unfolded with a phone call, Marie's frantic voice informing Samuel of an accident. The drive to the hospital felt endless, his mind racing with prayers and dread. The sterile corridors of the emergency room, the hushed voices of doctors, and the news that followed shattered Samuel's world. A drunk driver had run a red light, claiming the lives of Marie and their children. In the blink of an eye, Samuel's family was gone, and his once vibrant life turned to ash. In the weeks and months that followed, grief consumed Samuel. He tried to drown his pain in work, but the weight of loss was unrelenting. His focus wavered, and a severe back injury forced him to leave his job. With medical bills piling up and no income, Samuel soon lost his home. The house that once echoed with laughter now stood empty, repossessed by the bank. The man who had once built sturdy foundations for others found himself adrift, with nothing to anchor him. Samuel's descent into homelessness was swift and merciless. The streets were unforgiving, stripping him of dignity and identity. His dark skin and unkempt appearance made him an easy target for judgment and discrimination. Each day, he held a cardboard sign, hungry and homeless. Any help appreciated. God bless, enduring the averted gazes of passers-by and the occasional cruel remark. Get a job, one man sneered, as if employment were a simple solution for someone carrying the weight of grief and societal prejudice. Despite the hardships, Samuel observed a troubling pattern. Even among the homeless, racial disparities were glaring. He noticed how a white homeless man begging nearby received more sympathy and support, his cup filling steadily while Samuel's remained nearly empty. This inequity deepened Samuel's despair, a stark reminder of the systemic biases ingrained in society. He questioned whether the city he once called home would ever offer him the compassion he so desperately needed. Each night, Samuel returned to his makeshift shelter, a tent patched together with scraps and hope. There, he clung to the few possessions that connected him to his past, a tattered family photograph tucked into a notebook and a small hammer, a relic of his carpentry days. These remnants were both a comfort and a torment, reminders of what he had lost and the life that seemed forever out of reach. Yet, amidst the shadows of the city and the weight of his grief, Samuel's resilience endured. The man who had built homes for others began to build a fragile sense of survival for himself. Little did he know that his world was about to change once more, as a chance encounter in the alleyways of the city would ignite a spark of hope in his heart, setting him on a path he could never have anticipated. The story begins in the stark contrast between the towering skyscrapers of downtown and the neglected streets below. Samuel Johnson, a 52-year-old homeless man, navigates this urban dichotomy, embodying the struggles and resilience of those forgotten by society. Each morning, Samuel wakes in his tattered tent, pulling a worn blanket closer against the city's chill. The sounds of car horns, subway rumbles, and early commuters' chatter filter through the thin fabric, a reminder of the bustling world that seems indifferent to his existence. Samuel's appearance, dark skin weathered by years of hardship, a salt and pepper beard in desperate need of grooming, reflects his circumstances. The memories of his past life haunt him, from the aroma of his wife Marie's cooking to the laughter of his children, Tyrone and Aisha. The tragic night that shattered this life remains vivid. A car accident caused by a drunk driver claimed his family, leaving Samuel in an abyss of grief. Unable to cope, Samuel spiraled into depression and alcoholism, losing his job as a skilled carpenter due to a severe back injury. Eventually, eviction followed, and Samuel found himself on the streets, reduced to begging with a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry and homeless. Any help appreciated. God bless." Despite his efforts, he faced relentless discrimination and disdain from passers-by. One evening, Samuel's observations highlighted the disparities within the homeless community. Even among those in need, race dictated how society responded. These inequities deepened his despair, leaving him to wonder if the city he once called home would ever offer redemption. A chance encounter. One fateful evening, while scavenging for food behind a bustling restaurant, Samuel's life took an unexpected turn. The scent of grilled meats and spices wafted through the air, a cruel reminder of the meals he once shared with his family. As Samuel rifled through a dumpster, his fingers closed around a half-eaten burger still wrapped in its paper. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had all day. Just as he was about to take a bite, a faint rustling caught his attention. It came from a nearby alley shrouded in shadows. Samuel froze, his senses heightened. In his years on the streets, he had learned to be wary of unexpected noises. They could signal danger, a rival homeless person protecting their territory, or worse, an opportunistic predator. Curiosity, however, overrode caution. Samuel crept toward the source of the sound, his worn boots crunching softly on scattered debris. In the dim light of the alley, partially hidden behind a rusty garbage can, he spotted a dog. Its matted fur clung to its emaciated frame, and its ribs jutted out starkly. The animal's eyes, though, were what truly caught Samuel's attention. They were wide and searching, filled with a mixture of fear and desperation that Samuel recognized all too well. The dog's leg hung at an odd angle, evidence of an injury that had never properly healed. Samuel hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. The dog could be dangerous. Hungry animals often were. But as he watched, the dog shrank further into itself, as if trying to disappear into the shadows. Something in its posture stirred a pang of empathy in Samuel. Here was a creature that seemed even worse off than himself. "Hey there," Samuel called softly, his voice gravelly from disuse. The dog's ears perked up at the sound, but it made no move to approach or flee. Slowly, Samuel crouched, making himself appear less threatening. He broke off a piece of the burger and held it out, his hand trembling slightly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. You hungry, boy?" The dog's nose twitched as it caught the scent of food. With painstaking slowness, it began to inch forward. Samuel remained perfectly still, his arm outstretched in a gesture of peace. The dog's cold, wet nose brushed against his fingers, sending a shiver down Samuel's spine. Then, with a quickness that belied its weakened state, the dog snatched the morsel and retreated a few steps to devour it. Encouraged, Samuel broke off another piece of the burger and held it out. This time, the dog approached more quickly. It took the food gently from his hand, its eyes fixed on Samuel with a glimmer of something new, hope, perhaps, or at least a lessening of fear. As the dog ate, Samuel reached out tentatively and placed his hand on its head. The animal flinched at first but then leaned into the touch, as starved for affection as it was for food. "You're all alone too, huh?" Samuel said softly, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Guess that makes two of us." As the night wore on, Samuel shared what remained of his meager meal with his new companion. He spoke to the dog in low, soothing tones, recounting stories of his wife and children, the life he'd once had, and the dreams he'd long since abandoned. The dog listened, its soulful eyes fixed on Samuel as if it understood every word. When it came time for Samuel to return to his tent, he faced a dilemma. He couldn't leave the dog in the alley. It was clear the animal wouldn't survive much longer on its own. But taking on the responsibility of another life when he could barely care for himself seemed foolish at best. In the end, the decision was made for him. As Samuel stood to leave, the dog struggled to its feet and limped after him. It paused a few feet away, looking up at Samuel with those expressive eyes as if asking permission to follow. Samuel sighed, a mix of resignation and something he hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of purpose. "All right," he said. "Come on then." but I can't promise you much." The dog's tail wagged slightly, and it fell into step beside Samuel as they made their way through the dark city streets. As they walked, Samuel found himself talking again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Guess you need a name, huh? Can't just keep calling you dog." He thought for a moment, looking down at the animal padding silently beside him. In the dim streetlights, the dog's form was little more than a darker shadow against the night. "How about Shadow? That work for you?" The newly christened Shadow looked up at him and gave a soft whine, which Samuel took as agreement. They reached Samuel's tent just as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Samuel held open the flap of his makeshift home, and Shadow limped inside without hesitation, curling up in the corner as if he'd always belonged there. As Samuel settled onto his thin sleeping bag, he felt the warmth of Shadow's body press against his side. For the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. The weight of his grief and despair seemed just a little lighter. "Good night, Shadow," Samuel murmured, his hand resting on the dog's bony back as he drifted off to sleep. A tiny part of him dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. One fateful evening, while scavenging for food behind a bustling restaurant, Samuel's life took an unexpected turn. Amid the discarded scraps, a faint rustling drew his attention to a nearby alley. There, he found a stray dog, emaciated, injured, and desperate. Despite his wariness, Samuel felt a pang of empathy for the creature, recognizing a shared struggle for survival. Samuel extended a piece of his meager find, a half-eaten burger, as a peace offering. Slowly, the dog, later named Shadow, inched closer, accepting the food with cautious trust. This encounter marked the beginning of a bond that brought light into Samuel's dark world. For the first time in years, he had a purpose beyond mere survival. Shadow's companionship transformed Samuel's routine. Together, they navigated the streets, scavenging for food and warmth. Samuel began to share his life story with Shadow, finding solace in the dog's quiet understanding. As their bond grew, so did Samuel's determination to protect his new companion. A glimpse of hope. Shadow's presence reinvigorated Samuel's spirit in ways he hadn't anticipated. The dog's unwavering loyalty and gentle demeanor offered a rare source of comfort amidst the chaos of Samuel's life. Shadow became more than a companion. He became a symbol of resilience, mirroring Samuel's own struggles and his desire for connection. Together, they faced each day with cautious determination. Their foraging expeditions, though challenging, brought small victories. Samuel began to time their visits to certain dumpsters, learning the schedules of local restaurants and bakeries. One morning, their efforts paid off when they stumbled upon a bag of day-old pastries behind a high-end cafe. The sight of the pastries, slightly stale but otherwise untouched, filled Samuel with a fleeting sense of triumph. "Look at this, Shadow," he said, breaking off a piece of a croissant and holding it out for the dog to sniff. Shadow's tail wagged as he eagerly devoured the treat. The simple act of sharing food with Shadow brought a smile to Samuel's face, a rare moment of joy in an otherwise grim existence. It was in these moments that Samuel began to rediscover fragments of his former self, the part of him that once found satisfaction in providing for others. As their bond deepened, Samuel found himself reflecting on the life he'd lost. He spoke to Shadow often, recounting memories of his wife and children. He described Marie's laughter, Tyrone's love for basketball, and Aisha's dreams of becoming a doctor. Shadow would listen attentively, his expressive eyes fixed on Samuel as if he understood every word. The dog's quiet presence was a balm for Samuel's aching heart, offering solace in a world that had otherwise turned its back on him. Despite these small victories, the harsh realities of life on the streets persisted. Samuel's dark skin and ragged appearance continued to draw judgment and disdain. He noticed how passers-by avoided his gaze, their discomfort palpable. Even the simple act of begging became a constant reminder of his diminished status. Yet, with Shadow by his side, Samuel found the strength to endure. The dog's companionship gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going even when hope seemed out of reach. One evening, as they settled down in their makeshift shelter, Samuel took out his battered notebook. Inside was a faded photograph of his family, the edges worn from years of handling. He showed the picture to Shadow, his voice thick with emotion. "This was my family," he said softly. "They were my everything." Shadow nuzzled Samuel's hand, as if offering comfort. For the first time in years, Samuel allowed himself to grieve openly, the weight of his loss pouring out in quiet sobs. In Shadow's presence, he felt a sense of safety that he hadn't experienced since losing his family. As the days turned into weeks, Samuel noticed subtle changes in both Shadow and himself. The dog, once frail and timid, began to regain his strength. His coat, though still matted, took on a healthier sheen, and his limp grew less pronounced. Shadow's eyes, once dull with pain and hunger, now shone with vitality. Watching the dog's transformation filled Samuel with a quiet pride. He had saved Shadow, but in many ways, Shadow had saved him as well. Samuel, too, began to change. He stood a little taller, his shoulders less burdened by the weight of his circumstances. He started to take more care in his appearance, using public restrooms to wash up when he could. Though his resources were limited, he found ways to maintain a sense of dignity. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for survival, but for the possibility of a better future. Still, the challenges they faced were immense. The city was an unforgiving place, and Samuel was acutely aware of the precariousness of their existence. Food was always scarce, and shelter was never guaranteed. On cold nights, Samuel would wrap himself and Shadow in the tattered blanket they shared, doing his best to keep them both warm. "We'll get through this," he would whisper to Shadow, his voice filled with determination. "We have to." Through it all, Shadow remained a constant source of comfort and motivation. The dog's loyalty reminded Samuel that he wasn't entirely alone, even in the harshest moments. Their bond, forged in the crucible of hardship, became a lifeline for both man and dog. Together, they navigated the challenges of life on the streets, finding strength in each other and in the small victories that marked their days. Samuel began to see Shadow as more than just a companion. He saw him as a reflection of his own journey. Like Shadow, Samuel had been abandoned, left to fend for himself in a world that seemed indifferent to his suffering. But also like Shadow, Samuel had found resilience in the face of adversity. Their shared struggle created a bond that was unbreakable, a testament to the power of connection and the enduring strength of the human spirit. In Shadow, Samuel found not only a friend but a reason to keep going. The dog's unwavering presence reignited a spark of hope that had long been extinguished. Together, they faced the challenges of each day, proving that even in the darkest moments, there was still the possibility of light. Shadow's presence reinvigorated Samuel's spirit. The dog's unwavering loyalty and gentle demeanor reminded him of the life he had lost and the resilience he still possessed. Their foraging expeditions became small victories, with Samuel prioritizing Shadow's well-being over his own. One morning, they stumbled upon a bag of day-old pastries behind a high-end cafe. Sharing the unexpected bounty with Shadow brought Samuel a rare moment of joy. He began to rediscover fragments of his former self, caring for Shadow and reflecting on his past. These quiet moments of connection with the dog rekindled Samuel's sense of self-worth. Despite these small victories, the harsh realities of life on the streets persisted. Samuel's experiences with systemic racism and the stigma surrounding homelessness served as constant reminders of the obstacles he faced. Yet, with Shadow by his side, he found the strength to endure. A clash of worlds. The fragile peace that Samuel had painstakingly built with Shadow was shattered one fateful day when their worlds collided with a wealthy family. It began like any other morning, with Samuel waking up to the city's sounds and preparing for another day of survival. Shadow, now a constant presence by his side, wagged his tail as Samuel stretched and rubbed the sleep from his eyes. They set off together, navigating the labyrinth of alleys and streets, their bond growing stronger with each step. As they scavenged near an affluent neighborhood, Samuel's cautious optimism was tested. He noticed the heightened tension in the air, with increased police patrols and whispers of recent thefts circulating among the homeless community. Samuel's instincts told him to steer clear of trouble, but hunger drove him and Shadow to venture into unfamiliar territory. They found a quiet corner where Samuel settled with his usual cardboard sign, "Hungry and homeless. Any help appreciated. God bless." Shadow lay obediently by his side, his soulful eyes observing the bustling streets. It was then that the confrontation began. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up near their spot, its polished surface gleaming in the sunlight. Samuel's heart sank as he watched well-dressed figures emerge from the car, their sharp suits and designer handbags starkly contrasting his own tattered appearance. Leading the group was Robert Mitchell, a stern and imposing man whose presence commanded attention. Behind him stood his wife Caroline, elegantly dressed but visibly distressed, and their teenage daughter Emily, whose nervous glances hinted at uncertainty. Samuel felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach as Robert's piercing gaze landed on him. The man's eyes flickered to Shadow, who was now sitting up, alert and protective. "That's him," Robert said sharply, his voice carrying an air of authority. "That's the dog." Confused and defensive, Samuel instinctively placed a hand on Shadow's head. "Excuse me, sir," he began cautiously, "but I think there's some kind of mistake." Robert's expression hardened. No mistake, he snapped. That's our dog. He was stolen from our property, along with other valuables. And now we find him here, with you. The accusation hit Samuel like a physical blow. His mind raced to process the situation, but his voice remained steady. Sir, I found this dog weeks ago in an alley. He was injured and starving. I've been taking care of him ever since. Emily stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes locked on Shadow. Rex, she said softly, her voice trembling. At the sound of the name, Shadow's ears perked up, and his tail began to wag. Emily's face lit up with recognition. It is him. It's Rex. Shadow's reaction only fueled Robert's certainty. You see, he said, his tone triumphant. He knows his name. This man is lying. Samuel's chest tightened as he realized the gravity of the situation. Please, he pleaded, you have to believe me. I didn't steal him. I found him when he was barely clinging to life. He's been my only companion. Caroline's voice, though softer than her husband's, carried a note of skepticism. If that's true, she said, why didn't you report finding him? Why keep him for yourself? Samuel's shoulders slumped. I didn't think anyone would care, he admitted. I thought he was just another stray, abandoned like so many others. I never meant to cause any harm. The tension in the air was palpable as the Mitchell family exchanged glances. Emily knelt down and extended her hand to Shadow, who approached her cautiously. The connection between them was undeniable, and Samuel's heart ached at the realization that Shadow, or Rex, as they called him, might truly belong to someone else. Robert's voice broke the silence. We're taking him back, he declared. He's our dog, and we've been searching for him for weeks. You have no right to keep him. Samuel's eyes filled with tears as he looked at Shadow, who now stood uncertainly between him and the Mitchells. I understand, he said quietly, his voice trembling. But please, let me say goodbye. Robert hesitated, his stern demeanor softening slightly as he saw the genuine pain in Samuel's expression. Fine, he said gruffly. But make it quick. Kneeling down, Samuel cupped Shadow's face in his hands. You've been my light in the darkness, boy, he whispered. I don't know what I'll do without you, but I'm glad you'll be safe. Shadow nuzzled Samuel's hands, his tail wagging slowly as if sensing the finality of the moment. When Emily gently took hold of Shadow's collar and led him toward the car, Samuel felt a profound emptiness settle over him. He watched as the Mitchells drove away, taking with them the only source of comfort he had known in years. The confrontation left Samuel shattered, his sense of hope replaced by a crushing despair. He had done everything he could to care for Shadow, only to lose him in the end. As he sat alone on the cold pavement, Samuel wondered if the city and the world would ever offer him more than heartache and loss. The fragile peace Samuel found with Shadow was disrupted when a wealthy family's confrontation upended their lives. The Mitchell family, led by the stern Robert, accused Samuel of stealing their dog, Rex. Despite Samuel's protests and the bond he had built with Shadow, the family reclaimed the dog, leaving Samuel devastated. The encounter highlighted the systemic inequalities Samuel faced. Robert's harsh judgment, based on preconceived notions about Samuel's appearance and circumstances, reflected society's broader failures. Samuel's helplessness in the face of these accusations deepened his despair, as the one source of light in his life was taken away. Spiraling despair. Without Shadow, Samuel's world crumbled into a bleak and unforgiving reality. The dog's absence left a void that no amount of alcohol or isolation could fill. Shadow had been more than a companion, he was a lifeline, a symbol of hope that kept Samuel tethered to a sense of purpose. Without him, Samuel was thrust back into the depths of despair, haunted by the weight of his loss and the injustices he faced. The community that had once tolerated Samuel's presence now seemed to turn against him. Whispers of the confrontation with the wealthy family spread among the homeless, painting Samuel as a thief who had brought unwanted attention to their already fragile existence. Other homeless individuals, who had once shared resources or offered a kind word, now shunned him, seeing him as a threat to their precarious stability. Samuel overheard fragments of conversations, muttered accusations of stealing from the wrong people and getting what he deserved. The isolation was suffocating. Samuel's descent into despair was marked by moments of haunting reflection. At night, as he huddled in the doorway of an abandoned building, memories of his family resurfaced with cruel clarity. He could almost hear the laughter of Tyrone and Aisha as they played basketball in the driveway, or see the way Marie's eyes sparkled when she teased him about his woodworking projects. But these memories, once a source of comfort, now felt like daggers, reminding him of everything he had lost. Samuel found himself questioning his own worth, wondering if he had failed not only his family but also himself. His struggle with addiction intensified during this period. The lure of alcohol, a temporary escape from the relentless pain, became harder to resist. Samuel began to spend what little money he earned from begging on cheap liquor, numbing himself to the harsh realities of life on the streets. The alcohol provided fleeting moments of relief, but the clarity that followed was brutal. Each morning, Samuel would wake with a pounding headache and a crushing sense of guilt, his situation unchanged but his hope further eroded. One particularly cold night, about a week after losing Shadow, Samuel sat in a dark alley, clutching an almost empty bottle of cheap whiskey. The bitter wind cut through his tattered jacket, but he barely felt it. His thoughts were consumed by a single question: had he done enough? Had he truly done everything he could to protect Shadow, or had he failed the one creature who had shown him unconditional love? As he stared at the ground, tears streaming down his face, Samuel felt the weight of his circumstances pressing down on him like never before. He had lost his family, his home, his career, and now Shadow. The world seemed to take and take, leaving him with nothing but the aching emptiness in his chest. Samuel's physical health began to deteriorate rapidly during this period. The lack of proper nutrition, combined with the effects of alcohol and the cold winter nights, left him weak and vulnerable. His once proud posture was now hunched, his movements slow and labored. The spark that Shadow had reignited within him was extinguished, leaving behind a man who seemed to be merely existing rather than living. Despite his despair, the memory of Shadow lingered in Samuel's mind. He often found himself talking to the empty space beside him, as if the dog might somehow hear his words. "I'm sorry, boy," he would whisper, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry I let you down." These one-sided conversations became a small source of solace, a way for Samuel to cling to the bond he had shared with Shadow, even if it was only in his imagination. As the days turned into weeks, Samuel's condition grew increasingly dire. He was often turned away from public spaces, his appearance and odor drawing the ire of shopkeepers and pedestrians alike. He began to wander further afield in search of shelter and food, always wary of running into the police or the Mitchell family. The city, once a place of opportunity and dreams, now felt like a sprawling labyrinth of indifference and hostility. One morning, after a particularly harsh night, Samuel found himself standing outside a liquor store, staring at the flickering neon sign. His hands trembled, not just from the cold but from the internal struggle raging within him. He knew that buying another bottle would only deepen his despair, yet the temptation was almost unbearable. As he reached into his pocket for the crumpled bills he had earned that day, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What would Shadow think?" The thought stopped him in his tracks. For the first time in weeks, Samuel felt a flicker of something other than despair. It was faint and fleeting, but it was enough to make him turn away from the liquor store and keep walking. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the weight of his circumstances remained heavy. But in that moment, Samuel made a choice to keep moving forward, however slowly, in the hope that better days might still lie ahead. Without Shadow, Samuel's world crumbled. The dog's absence left a void that alcohol and isolation could not fill. The community that once tolerated his presence now shunned him, associating him with the theft he had been wrongfully accused of committing. Even other homeless individuals turned against him, compounding his loneliness. Samuel's descent into despair was marked by moments of haunting reflection and fleeting dreams of his lost family. His struggle with addiction intensified, threatening to consume the remnants of his will to survive. Yet, even in his darkest moments, the memory of Shadow's loyalty lingered, a faint reminder of the possibility of redemption. An unexpected return. Just as Samuel's life seemed to spiral into an inescapable abyss, fate intervened in the most surprising way. It had been weeks since Shadow was taken from him, and Samuel's days had blurred into a monotonous cycle of survival and despair. His health was deteriorating, and he moved through the city like a ghost, unseen and unnoticed by the bustling crowds. But one day, while slumped in the doorway of an abandoned shop, everything changed. Samuel's hazy thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car door slamming. He looked up, squinting against the harsh sunlight, and saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Robert Mitchell, the man who had accused him of theft and taken Shadow. Behind him, the rest of the Mitchell family followed, their expressions ranging from apprehensive to contrite. And then Samuel saw him, Shadow, straining at his leash, his tail wagging furiously. "Samuel Johnson!" Robert called out, his voice carrying a mixture of authority and remorse. Samuel didn't respond immediately, unsure if he was dreaming or hallucinating. Robert stepped closer, his gaze softening as he took in Samuel's disheveled state. "I owe you an apology," he said, his tone earnest. "We made a terrible mistake. The real thief has been caught, and he confessed to everything, including letting Rex, Shadow, out. We've been looking for you to make things right." Samuel's heart raced as the words registered. He looked down at Shadow, who was now whining and tugging against the leash to reach him. Overwhelmed by emotion, Samuel managed to whisper, "Shadow." Emily, the teenage daughter, stepped forward and unclipped Shadow's leash. The dog bolted toward Samuel, leaping into his arms and covering his face with slobbery kisses. Samuel held onto him tightly, tears streaming down his cheeks. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of joy pierce through his despair. Robert cleared his throat, drawing Samuel's attention. "I can't undo the harm we caused you," he said, "but we want to help. You saved our dog, you took care of him when we couldn't. Please, let us return the favor." Caroline, Robert's wife, stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "We'd like to offer you a job," she said, "as a caretaker for Shadow and the other animals on our property. We can provide room and board, too. You won't have to live on the streets anymore." Samuel looked at the family, his emotions a whirlwind of gratitude and disbelief. "You'd do that for me?" he asked, his voice trembling. Emily nodded eagerly. "You're the reason Rex, Shadow, is alive," she said. "You gave him a chance, and we want to give you one, too." Samuel hesitated, the weight of his pride and past experiences making it difficult to accept their offer. But when he looked down at Shadow, whose trusting eyes seemed to plead with him, he knew what he had to do. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say you'll let us help," Robert replied. "Say you'll give yourself a chance." With a deep breath, Samuel nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll try." The Mitchells' relief was palpable. Caroline reached out and placed a comforting hand on Samuel's shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. As they helped Samuel to his feet, Shadow remained by his side, his tail wagging with uncontainable joy. For the first time in years, Samuel felt the weight of his burdens begin to lift. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Shadow and the Mitchells by his side, he dared to hope for a brighter future. Fate intervened when the Mitchells discovered they had wrongfully accused Samuel. The real thief was apprehended, and Rex's true story came to light. Overcome with remorse, the family sought Samuel out, finding him in a state of despair. Their reunion was marked by heartfelt apologies and a tearful reunion with Shadow. Robert, humbled by the experience, acknowledged his prejudices and offered Samuel a chance at redemption. The family's offer of a job and a place to stay represented a lifeline, an opportunity for Samuel to rebuild his life. Rebuilding and redemption. Samuel's transition to his new life was anything but easy. After years of living on the streets, the comforts of stability felt almost foreign to him. The room provided by the Mitchells, with its warm bed and clean sheets, was a stark contrast to the cold, hard ground he had grown accustomed to. Each night, as Samuel lay down to sleep, he found himself overwhelmed by gratitude and disbelief. Yet, adjusting to this new reality required him to confront the lingering shadows of his past. The Mitchells' home was large and orderly, a reflection of their affluent lifestyle. Samuel's first days there were spent familiarizing himself with the routine. Caroline, ever kind and patient, showed him around the property, pointing out the areas that would require his attention as the new caretaker. The property included a lush garden, several small animals, and, of course, Shadow, whose presence brought Samuel immeasurable comfort. Shadow's role in Samuel's recovery was profound. The dog's unyielding loyalty and affection grounded Samuel, reminding him daily of why he had chosen to accept the Mitchells' offer. Shadow followed Samuel everywhere, his wagging tail a constant source of encouragement. Whenever Samuel doubted himself, Shadow was there, nudging him forward with quiet reassurance. Robert, who had initially been stern and judgmental, began to show a different side. Though their relationship started on shaky ground, Robert's efforts to make amends were sincere. He took time to get to know Samuel, occasionally joining him in the garden to chat or lend a hand. These conversations were a turning point for Samuel, who realized that Robert's earlier behavior stemmed from ignorance rather than malice. Over time, mutual respect blossomed between the two men. Emily, the Mitchells' teenage daughter, played a significant role in helping Samuel rebuild his confidence. Her youthful enthusiasm and genuine kindness reminded Samuel of his own children. Emily often sought Samuel's advice on school projects or brought him books to read, encouraging him to embrace his intellect and creativity. Her unwavering belief in his abilities gave Samuel the courage to begin exploring his long-dormant passions. One of those passions was carpentry. In his earlier life, Samuel had been a skilled carpenter, crafting furniture and intricate woodwork with precision and care. The Mitchells, upon learning of his talent, offered him a workshop on their property. At first, Samuel hesitated, doubting whether he could still create something of value. But with their encouragement, he decided to give it a try. His first project was a birdhouse, a simple yet symbolic endeavor. As Samuel shaped the wood and assembled the pieces, he felt a sense of purpose reignite within him. The act of creation reminded him of who he used to be, a man capable of building something beautiful from nothing. When the birdhouse was complete, Emily hung it in the garden, where it quickly became home to a family of sparrows. The sight filled Samuel with quiet pride. As weeks turned into months, Samuel took on more ambitious projects. He repaired broken furniture, crafted decorative pieces for the Mitchells' home, and even built a small gazebo in the garden. Each completed project was a testament to his resilience and skill, and with every nail hammered and joint secured, Samuel felt himself grow stronger. However, the path to redemption was not without its challenges. Samuel's battle with addiction lingered in the background, a constant test of his resolve. There were moments when the weight of his past threatened to pull him back into old habits. On particularly difficult days, when memories of his family felt too heavy to bear, Samuel found himself standing at the edge of temptation. But each time, Shadow's presence brought him back. The dog's unwavering gaze seemed to say, "You're not alone anymore." The Mitchell's support was another crucial factor in Samuel's recovery. Caroline often checked in on him, offering words of encouragement and ensuring he felt at home. She also introduced him to local community programs, including a support group for individuals recovering from homelessness and addiction. Though hesitant at first, Samuel found solace in the shared experiences of others who had faced similar struggles. These meetings became a source of strength, reminding him that he wasn't alone in his journey. Samuel's growing sense of stability allowed him to reflect on his past with a newfound clarity. He began to see his experiences not as a series of failures, but as a testament to his resilience. The hardships he had endured had shaped him, but they did not define him. With the Mitchells' help, Samuel started to rebuild not just his life, but his sense of self-worth. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Robert raised a toast. "To Samuel," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "For his strength, his talent, and his heart. We're lucky to have him as part of our family." The words brought tears to Samuel's eyes. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen and valued. As Samuel continued to rebuild his life, he realized that the journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face and wounds to heal. But with Shadow by his side, the Mitchells' unwavering support, and the rediscovery of his own strength, Samuel felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. His story, once marked by despair, was now a testament to the power of compassion, second chances, and the unbreakable spirit of hope. Samuel's transition to a new life was fraught with challenges. Adjusting to the Mitchells' world required confronting his insecurities and overcoming his reliance on alcohol. Shadow's presence remained a source of comfort and motivation, anchoring Samuel as he navigated this unfamiliar terrain. Through hard work and determination, Samuel began to reclaim his sense of purpose. His carpentry skills, long dormant, were put to use, and he found satisfaction in contributing to the household. The Mitchells' acceptance and support provided the stability he needed to heal. Forging new bonds. As the weeks turned into months, Samuel began to find his place within the Mitchell household. What had initially been an uneasy alliance, born out of guilt and necessity, gradually transformed into a genuine bond of trust and mutual respect. Samuel's presence brought a new dynamic to the family, and his relationships with each member deepened in unique and meaningful ways. Robert, who had once viewed Samuel through a lens of suspicion and prejudice, now saw him as a man of integrity and strength. Their conversations, which started as awkward exchanges about household tasks, evolved into heartfelt discussions about life, loss, and resilience. Robert often joined Samuel in the garden or the workshop, eager to learn about carpentry and to share his own experiences. These moments of camaraderie bridged the gap between their vastly different worlds, and over time, they developed a strong sense of mutual respect. Caroline's kindness and warmth played a pivotal role in Samuel's integration into the family. She made a conscious effort to include him in family meals, celebrations, and decisions, treating him not as an employee but as a valued member of their household. Caroline's empathy and understanding helped Samuel navigate the challenges of adjusting to his new life. She often checked in with him, offering encouragement and support when he struggled with self-doubt or the lingering effects of his past traumas. Emily's youthful energy and genuine affection for Samuel brought a sense of joy and lightness to his life. She was fascinated by his stories and his carpentry skills, often spending hours in the workshop watching him work or helping with small projects. Emily's enthusiasm reminded Samuel of his own children, Tyrone and Aisha, and their shared moments became a source of healing for him. Emily's curiosity and openness also sparked Samuel's creativity, encouraging him to take on more ambitious projects and to explore new ideas. Shadow remained at the heart of Samuel's newfound sense of belonging. The dog's unwavering loyalty and affection continued to be a source of comfort and motivation. Shadow's presence brought the family closer together, as they all shared in the joy of his antics and the warmth of his companionship. Whether it was playing in the garden with Emily, accompanying Samuel on his daily walks, or curling up by the fireplace with Caroline and Robert, Shadow's role as a unifying force in the household was undeniable. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a family dinner, when Robert proposed a toast to Samuel. "To Samuel," he said, raising his glass, "for his strength, his resilience, and the positive impact he's had on all of us. We're lucky to have him as part of our family." The words brought tears to Samuel's eyes, as he realized how far he had come and how deeply he was valued by the people around him. As Samuel's relationships with the Mitchells grew stronger, he also began to reconnect with the wider community. Caroline encouraged him to participate in local events and to join a support group for individuals recovering from homelessness and addiction. Though hesitant at first, Samuel found these experiences to be profoundly transformative. He met others who had faced similar struggles, and their shared stories of resilience and recovery inspired him to continue moving forward. Samuel's journey of forging new bonds extended beyond the Mitchell family and the community. He also began to rebuild his relationship with himself. Through the support and encouragement he received, Samuel started to see himself not as a man defined by his past mistakes and hardships, but as someone with the strength and capacity to create a meaningful future. His newfound confidence allowed him to embrace his role in the household fully, contributing not just as a caretaker but as a mentor, a friend, and an integral part of the family. Samuel's story reminds us of the incredible power of resilience, kindness, and second chances. From the darkest depths of despair, Samuel found hope through an unlikely bond with a stray dog named Shadow. Together, they faced life's challenges, and their connection paved the way for redemption, healing, and a fresh start. This journey teaches us that even in the hardest times, a little compassion can transform lives in ways we never imagined. Whether it's through the loyalty of a dog or the willingness of others to recognize and correct their mistakes, Samuel's life was proof that change is always possible. If Samuel's story of courage and transformation inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Let's spread the message of hope and kindness, one story at a time. Samuel's story reminds us of the incredible power of resilience, kindness, and second chances. From the darkest depths of despair, Samuel found hope through an unlikely bond with a stray dog named Shadow. Together, they faced life's challenges, and their connection paved the way for redemption, healing, and a fresh start. This journey teaches us that even in the hardest times, a little compassion can transform lives in ways we never imagined. Whether it's through the loyalty of a dog or the willingness of others to recognize and correct their mistakes, Samuel's life was proof that change is always possible. If Samuel's story of courage and transformation inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Let's spread the message of hope and kindness, one story at a time.